So I'm a risk taker. And so earlier this year, when someone came up with the idea of going to a renegade country that Americans are not allowed to go to, I said, yes. So I went to that subversive little place south of here, or well, actually south of Florida, called Cuba, a little gem right in the middle of the ocean. Now, if you're an American, there are two ways that you can go to Cuba. You can go legally by paying a whole lot of money and being on a cultural tour where they're going to be the architects of every minute of your time. Or you can go to a third country, which is the illegal way to go, what I opted for. I was traveling with a friend of mine who's kind of a nervous traveler, and not only is she a nervous traveler, but her husband is so nervous he won't even leave home. So as we were planning for our trip, we started to look at, what was the risk really to go there? And the risk, as nearly as I could tell from the internet, ranged from absolutely nothing to possibly as much as $15,000 and a big black mark somewhere in the annals of Homeland Security that could possibly inhibit your ability to travel in the future. Well, so we were trying to manage this risk, and I really didn't know what to say. I mean, what would we do if we were caught on this? And if they asked, would we lie? I wasn't quite sure how we were going to handle this, but yeah, we went on and we made all the arrangements to go there through Canada. And as we were planning this trip about a week before we actually left, my friend calls me and she says, Sharona, she said, Dick, my husband, he's worried about what's going to happen when we cross this border. What should I tell him? And I said, well, tell him not to worry. So we, the risky part was not going into Cuba, because when you go into Cuba, they don't even stamp your passport, okay? The risky part is not coming back into Canada. The Canadians love the Cubans love the Canadians, no big deal. In fact, if you are on a tourist bus in Cuba and they start telling you anything about it, they're likely to tell you a joke about Americans because they don't think we're there, right? But what the risk really is when you come back, when you arrive in Canada, they stamp your passport. When you go to Cuba, you don't get a stamp. When you come back into Canada, they stamp your passport again, which means that some savvy passport control guy at the United States border could say, you have one stamp coming into Canada. You have another stamp coming into Canada. Where were you in between? So that's when, my mind's going, do I lie? Maybe I was in the Bahamas and they just didn't stamp my passport. What do I know? I didn't know what I was going to say. So we'd put off thinking about how we were going to handle this moment. We had a wonderful time in Cuba. We listened to music. We ate great food. We danced. We were with people. We listened to music. Did I say that? It was great music. It was wonderful. So we come back into Canada, and I get kind of courageous when I'm at the border, and I say to the passport guy, this is the Canadian guy, I say, so do you really have to stamp my passport? And he looks at me over his glasses and he says, I can understand why you would ask that. And then he says, yes, I do have to stamp your passport. But he has a little glint in his eye, and he flips back the pages of my passport, his 10-year passport, and he finds this little flapping visa that had expired, and he discreetly stamps my passport under this visa somewhere back in the passport. So it was very encouraging, but at the same time, it was a little bit scary. Why was he going to all that extra effort? Did I need to be scared? So we had one more day in Canada before we were coming to the moment of truth, when we were going to cross back into the US border, and we were strategizing the whole thing. We're walking down this market street eating fresh blueberries, not sure where they got them in Canada in March, but nonetheless, we were eating fresh blueberries and deciding things like, well, let's not stand in the same custom line, because that would be a little bit safer. And let's make sure that we got rid of all of our Cuban currency. and just everything that could kind of help us make our way through this border without issue. So finally what I didn't know is when you go through Canada, they are constantly flushing Americans through the border, and it is so automated that it's all on computers and you don't fill out forms anymore, and you're actually only standing in front of that border guy for like 5 seconds, and I just zipped it. It was no big deal. But I turned around and I saw my friend standing in front of this border guard, and her face was long and somber, and she just kept going. And for 15 minutes, she stood there. When she finally made it through the border, I said, "What happened?" And she said, I was admonished. I was admonished because I lied. I said, "You lied?" And she said, "Yes. I had told them that I had no fruits and vegetables, and I was standing there eating blueberries."